Welcome back to the College Basketball Bracket Science YouTube channel and podcast network. I'm your host today, and we got a fun show ahead of you. We got a lot to talk about today. We're going to start with the historic individual performances that we saw this past weekend. So we're going to talk about all the results that just went on from this past weekend. We're going to label what this means for these individual players and their draft stocks, obviously, because it was most notably the freshmen just going off. We had 3 40-point performances. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we are going to talk about how these results, influence the specific teams, how it influences their seed line and their bracketology outlook for the NCAA tournament in just about 50-ish days. I think we're less than 50 days away from Selection Sunday. How fun is that? That is huge. It's coming right around the corner. So we are going to lead in, and then we will talk about our top 5 seeds. So 1 seeds, 2 seeds, 3 seeds, 4 seeds, and 5 seeds. We're going to talk about all of those in order, your top 1 seed, your top 2 seed, your top 3 seed, all the way through, and some teams that might have just missed the cut. We'll talk about those before diving into our rankings for today. So usually a Monday show, we will discuss some sort of rankings. Today, it's going to be the Kenpom rankings because the Kenpom rankings are changing. We had one team climb all the way into the top 5. So we're going to talk, and we have a new number 1 team. So we're going to talk about the new rankings with the respective offensive ratings and defensive ratings. Some might be surprising to you. And then to close out the show, we will, of course, just preview the upcoming week. We're recording this Monday, January 26th, about 10 o'clock Eastern time on the East Coast. Tonight is the return of Big Monday. College football is finally gone. Thank God. Great story for Indiana, but let's get college basketball in the meat of the sports world right now. So we'll talk about Big Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then we will record again on Thursday. Before we dive into everything, be sure to hit that like button if you enjoy talking college hoops, and subscribe to the show. Turn on the post notifications so you stay up to date on the college basketball season and beyond. Follow us on Instagram at Bracket Science with 2 S's in it. Just a little housekeeping thing. For those who missed our last show, we are going to start recording 3 times a week. So Monday is going to be predominantly, reviewing the weekend and talking some sort of rankings. And we always do our top seeds on Monday, so 1 through 5 seeds. And then on Thursday's show now, instead of Fridays, we're going to do a bracketology show. And then it's actually I'm going to record late Friday night for a Saturday morning show, just previewing the weekend along with talking about a fun stat. So this week is going to be, those stats that historically you have to have specifically at Kenpom to be a national championship threat. The number is top 57 in offensive rating and 44th in defensive rating. You have to be inside that. Without that Kevin Ollie UConn team, it would be a lot lower. So we'll discuss those other stats without that outlier UConn team. Just predominantly what you need to, win the NCAA tournament, or as long as history repeats itself. We know college basketball's over the place, but we're going to do a bunch of fun shows like that. So be sure to hit that, subscribe button. All right, without further ado, let's dive into it. Just real quick, let's just talk about, the couple games that did happen on Friday. Ohio State and Michigan, a rivalry game. Ohio State actually played fine against Michigan. Michigan's just better coach, better team. They ended up winning 74-62. Utah State rebounded. They were, starting to fall towards the bubble. They did win at Colorado State 65-61. Indiana, you just can't lose this game at Rutgers. And they didn't. They killed them 82-59. Then St. Louis, 97 at St. Bonaventure 62. Just wanted to mention St. Louis here because all the hype is going to Miami of Ohio. St. Louis has 1 loss on the season, and they're top 25 at Kenpom right now. St. Louis should be the darling mid-major story right now, and not a bunch of people talking about them. The Miami story is fantastic, but St. Louis actually has a chance to make a little bit of a run in March Madness. This could be like a Loyola Chicago-ish kind of team, the Wofford team a couple years ago, even FAU, teams that were highly ranked in the computers. The computers are telling you this team's good. However, not a lot of conversation around St. Louis. This team is awesome. They're a lot of fun. They might be wearing home uniforms in March Madness. They might be a top 8 seed. This team is really fun. They have 1 loss, and that loss was a fluky, missed free throw by Stanford, which ended up in the corner 3 for a heave that ended up going in for Stanford to end up beating St. Louis. But outside of that, they haven't suffered a loss, and they're drilling teams. Like we said, the computers like them. Really fun basketball team. So don't, let this St. Louis story fade out, because the Miami of Ohio story is awesome, but St. Louis is also awesome. All right, let's talk about Saturday, the day to know. Let's start with number 4 Purdue losing at home to number 11 Illinois. Illinois' final score 88-82. The story: Keaton Wagler, 46 points on the road at Mackey Arena. 46 points, 13 of 17 from the field, 9 of 11 from 3. Is that hot? Yes, he was on an absolute heater. He just torched this Purdue defense. I mean, it wasn't even like like he had a lot of open shots, but just the step backs. Matt Painter was giving him a bunch of praise in the post game. It was an unbelievable performance for Keaton Wagler to go in there. I know the story's been going crazy. He's, in the hundreds or 200s, depending on what recruiting outlook or recording database you're looking at coming into the season, just because he didn't play AAU. And he's already like a projected top 10 pick in the NBA draft. He is just absolutely incredible. And Illinois picks up a huge win for their bracketology metrics. This is a, seed line climb right here, winning at Purdue. This is a big boost for Illinois. They're up to 5th at Kenpom right now. They have the number 1 offense in the country. So we'll discuss that a little bit later in the Kenpom rankings. For Purdue, Braden Smith was really good in this one. 27 points, 12 rebounds. It was just the Keaton Wagler just firing on all cylinders that took him down. And absolutely incredible individual performance. 46 of their 88 points. Illinois in good shape. Purdue still right there as well. Let's move on. Let's actually go across the top and talk about Utah at number 13, BYU, just real quick. BYU beats them 91-78, as you'd expect. But A.J. Debanza, 43 points. Yet again, another 40-point performance here. 15 of 24 from the field, 4 of 5 from 3. An absolute dominant scorer. A.J. Debanza is going to have a matchup tonight, later on Monday, against Darren Peterson in Kansas. A highly anticipated game. We will preview that game here in a little bit. But A.J. Debanza, what a performance. Moving on, number 6, Houston at number 12, Texas Tech. Texas Tech gets the job done 90-86. Let's talk about Texas Tech before labeling our next 40-point performer. JT Toppin, 31 points, 12 rebounds. He played all 40 minutes in this game. JT Toppin played 40 minutes. Christian Anderson played 40 minutes. Now, Texas Tech is still, believe it or not, a little bit banged up, and they still beat Houston in this game. Luke Bamboy, was technically labeled as able to play. I actually didn't check. I don't believe he played. He didn't play, at least when I was watching. I didn't notice him out there. And he's a big important piece for this Texas Tech team. But this Texas Tech team is so fun. They have a different identity this year. And it's sort of, I guess a little bit similar to last year's. It's just basically let JT Toppin cook down low. And every once in a while, you give the ball to Lawan Watts down low. And then just have shooters on top of shooters, just running everything through the post to having some shooters on the outside, a little inside-outside action with Christian Anderson, who actually wasn't great in this game. They said he did play 40 minutes in this game, which him and Toppin have been doing a lot recently. But, Donovan Otwell, Jalen Petty, just with these two shooters who have really stepped up as of late, and then Lawan Watts being down low, it's a really fun team to watch. This team can beat anyone. Obviously, Houston was playing like the best team in the country since they started off struggling. If you sort the data over at barttorvik.com, Houston has played like the number 1 team in the country over the past couple months. And then Texas Tech just knocking down shots. If they can knock down shots, but I left this game thinking both teams are Final Four teams. And, that's not surprising with Grant McCaslin and, Kelvin Sampson, obviously, 2 fantastic coaches and leading 2 of the best programs in the Big 12 and in the country. For Houston, Kingston Flemings, 42 points in a losing effort, 15 of 26 from the field, 4 of 9 from 3. It was just like every best player on every one you'll see on this graphic just stepped up in these respective games, and Kingston Flemings was the one. He might be the best player Kelvin Sampson's coached ever. He's probably going to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft. He's lightning fast, can knock down the 3. He is incredible, but just not enough. It's crazy to say 42 points, not enough, but he was not to his blame. But Texas Tech just played a little bit too well in this one, knocked down too many shots. Both teams perfectly fine. Like I said, I left this game thinking both teams are Final Four teams. I think, it might be a little bit harder to win 6. There is a big difference for those who don't know to winning 6 and winning 4. That should be obvious to say come March Madness time. You win 4, you're in the Final Four. Like we saw, let's just give a random example. The Mark Sears Alabama team that was a 4 seed and made the Final Four. That was like a Final Four team, obviously, but they weren't ever seen as like a national championship threat. I'm curious if the same is with this Texas Tech team, just as well as they shoot. However, they have one of the best players, maybe the best player in college basketball down low. So I'm going to stop short at calling them like a national championship team right now. They're 18th at Kenpom, so that's going to go against that. However, they're right there to make the Final Four and even the national championship game. And I think this team will end up in the top 15 at Kenpom. Houston, I know they lost the game, but still a national championship threat in my mind. All right, let's go across and just kind of go all out of order yet again. Wake Forest at Duke. Duke wins 90-69. No surprise there. But Cam Boozer, no one's really talking about him because of these other 40-point performances. He put up 32 points, 9 rebounds, 11 of 20 from the field. He was incredible as well. These freshmen just continue to step up. There wasn't really anything else notable about this game, but just wanted to give some love to Cam Boozer because he was awesome in this game. So let's go back to the other side of the graphic with the big games. Tennessee did win at number 17, Alabama, spoiling Charles Bediako's return. Nate Ament, speaking of awesome freshmen, this one also flew under the radar because of the 40-point performances. He had 29.7 rebounds, 10 of 20 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3. This was his best game in a Tennessee uniform. I've labeled that he is kind of he's been the freshman who was so highly thought of, top 10 pick, that just hasn't really popped yet. In this game, he popped. This might have been the breaking out party. You see the talent. The talent's obviously there. He's got the length. He's got the shooting ability. But to step up and, lead his team to a victory at Alabama was really big. Charles Bediako was actually pretty good. He had 13 points, 5 of 6 from the field. I just don't think this Alabama team is, I mean, it's crazy. I keep going back and forth. I said last week, I'm like, something about this Tennessee team just doesn't seem to have it. They went at Alabama. I don't think either team is honestly even a Final Four threat. That's crazy to say about an Alabama team who can knock down a bunch of shots. I just don't think they have it this year with the rim protection, and their shooting just isn't as good as it's been the past couple seasons. They can knock down threes, but it's not as good, not as much talent. I think this is both the season where both teams will be, probably if they both make the Sweet 16, I think that's a win for the SEC and for these respective teams. All right, moving down, let's talk about number 22. North Carolina did win at number 14, Virginia. Virginia got off to a blazing hot start, and it was like, oh my God, you see all North Carolina fans tweeting, it's time for Hubert Davis to go, and then they come all the way back and pick up a huge victory, 85-80. Caleb Wilson was fine. This is kind of, believe it or not, a down game for Caleb Wilson. That's how good he's been. 20 points, 8 of 12 from the field. He's been terrific for Virginia. They're still hovering around, probably like I'll talk about him here in a little bit, but I won't spoil it for you. But North Carolina kind of needed this win. I had him as a 7 seed in Friday's bracketology. Hadn't really picked up anything truly amazing, but this is a great start, which will boost them quite a bit, obviously. Maybe one of the more surprising results in the country. Florida had been firing on all cylinders, but Auburn went to Florida and gave it to them, 76-67. They led pretty much the entire way. Keyshawn Hall, 24 points, 7 rebounds, 3 of 5 from the 3. He's a bona fide, SEC Player of the Year candidate right now. This is a huge win for Auburn. Auburn's going to be your team that you see, you're like, how are they 20-13 or whatever it would be going into the NCAA tournament and like a 6 or 7 seed? It's because they've played an incredible schedule and they've beaten some really good teams, and they've also, dropped some games, as you're going to do with a first-year head coach playing such a tough schedule. But this is the win that this will boost them. For Florida, Tommy Hauck had 27 points, 10 rebounds. He is also in my opinion, I think I know it's weird to say just coming off of a loss, I do still think Florida is going to win the SEC, in my opinion, but Florida has looked a little, you lose to TCU, now you lose at home to Auburn. I still think they're the best team. The analytics have them as the best team, which is 11th at Kenpom. Your next best is Vanderbilt at 13th. I don't know. I don't know what it is about this team, but I still think Tommy Hauck would probably be my second pick right now for SEC Player of the Year, with probably Keyshawn Hall being third. We'll talk about my pick when we get to Arkansas here in a little bit. Villanova played number 2. UConn took them to overtime. Final score, UConn 75, Villanova 67. Solo Ball had 24 points to lead UConn in this game. Terrace Reed also added a double-double. UConn is kind of just squeaking by these games. They have a lot of veteran presence, so they're winning a lot of close games. But to me, the story here was Villanova, and the big question for me with Villanova was, can their bigs really stand up to, Eric Ryby and Terrace Reed and even Caravan and, just some of these just grown men and big bodies. And they did. Duke Brennan, 16 points, 14 rebounds. He was really good in this game and kind of showed that he can compete with some of the top guys in the Big East at the big man position. So he had a really good game in this one. I'm feeling optimistic about Villanova after this game. UConn squeaks out a win. I want to start seeing UConn just dominate these games, like where it's like, all right, you played St. John's, you played Villanova, you played Seton Hall, and you just dominate from start to finish. You're like, yep, that team can win the national championship. Haven't quite seen that yet. We see all the pieces. We see the roster construction. They're number 2 in the country. Nothing too wrong. However, they're just kind of squeaking by these games right now. But they do end up getting the win here, which will be a quad. I think it's a quad 1 win at the point. But Yeah, good. They get the job done. Moving on, speaking of getting the job done, number 7 Nebraska wins at the barn and at Minnesota 76-57. They trailed at the half and dominated in the second half. Price Sanford continues to be on a heater, 22 points, 10 rebounds, one of the best shooters in the country. This Nebraska team is just so sound. They are so sound. Ranked mass continues to be good. Jamarcus Lawrence, Fred Hoiberg has done just an incredible job with this Nebraska team. Obviously, they will probably jump into the top 5 of this next week's AP poll, which we'll release in about 3 hours here as, Houston and Purdue both lost. So I would expect them to climb up there. Huge win there. Number 21, Georgia lost at Texas badly, 87-67. A huge game for Texas after Sean Miller's latest press conference where he's like, we just foul everyone. Doesn't matter who, we will foul. And they came back and showed some things. Dalen Swain is the piece that kind of makes this thing go. The continuity with Sean Miller coming from Xavier. He had 26 points, was 12 of 16 from the field. Tremont Mark was also good. He had 23 points in this one. Very individually talented player is Tremont Mark, but Dalen Swain is kind of just the piece that makes this engine go, in my opinion. So big win there for Texas. We'll see when the next bracketology, when I do my next bracketology this upcoming weekend, or on Thursday it'll be. So come back for that. But we'll see if Texas can get into the field. I don't think they're quite there yet, but they're getting close. Number 19, Kansas dominates at Kansas State, specifically in the second half. Darren Peterson did not play in this game. Flory Badunga was really good, 21 points, 10 rebounds, 10 of 13 from the field. Melvin Council Jr., 17 points, 12 assists, was kind of mocking the Jerome Tang going into the crowd and dancing with them after wins. But this Kansas State team is terrible. They're 10-10 on the season. It has really gone south for Jerome Tang at Kansas State after that first season with Keyshawn. Oh boy, I can't even remember his name. Wow, how can you not rank Keontae Johnson? That was his name, Keontae Johnson plus Marquise Noel. Since then, it just has not gone well, especially with a high NIL budget. But for Kansas, pick up a 24-point win at their rival without their best player. Pretty good stuff there for the Jayhawks. Moving on, number 9, Iowa State won at Oklahoma State, 84-71. Milan Momcilovic is not getting enough attention. 29 points, 5 of 9 from 3 in this game. He is shooting 54% from behind the arc this season. That leads the country. What else leads the country is his makes. It's not like he's shooting 54%. He's shot 43s this year. No, he shot 148 threes and he's made 80 of them. This is absolutely incredible for Momcilovic, and Josh Jefferson had 20 points in this one. He was also 4 of 4 from 3. So the dynamic duo there, it's kind of hard to point out if Momcilovic is due for some regression, because it's going to be hard to maintain a 54% 3-point shooting percentage the entire season. You're bound to go cold at some point. It just hasn't happened. And if he continues shooting like this and Jefferson's playing this way, we know what Tamin Lipsey can do. I know Iowa State lost a couple games in a row. This team's still there. They're still right there with that big 3. They're going to continue to improve under Otzelberger. Don't write off Iowa State just yet. Oklahoma State is starting to fizzle, though. All right, let's talk about number 1 team in the country. We haven't even talked about the number 1 team in the land yet, as they just dominated West Virginia, 88-53 from start to finish. Braden Burries, speaking of awesome freshman, 22 points, 7 assists, 4 of 8 from 3. Ever since Braden Burries has really come into form, started knocking down shots, become a key piece in this offense, this Arizona team has just taken another step. We talked about their kind of lack of just 3-point attempts. They're not bad shooters, but now having a shooter and a kind of a go-to guy where if you need a bucket, you got Jaden Bradley and Braden Burries is kind of awesome. I know Koa Pete had that fantastic first game for against Florida, where he really took the spotlight of the freshman class and started this freshman class run. Since then, it's arguable that Braden Burries has been better than Koa Pete. Now they kind of go back and forth on who's having the best games, but they just have so many options. This Arizona team seems to be kind of bulletproof. They will be tested at BYU here this week, so we'll talk about that game a little bit later, maybe next week. I believe it's on. Is it on Saturday? I think. I can't remember. I'd have to double check, but that's obviously going to be a huge matchup. Koa Pete did have 17 points, 7 rebounds, was 7 of 9 from the field. Mo Krivas continues to be awesome with 11 points and 12 rebounds in this game. Let's keep it going. We're going to continue talking about freshmen as Louisville finally got Mikel Brown Jr. back off of his back injury. They took down Virginia Tech 85-71, and Mikel Brown Jr. made his presence known. 20 points, 6 assists, was 3 of 6 from 3 in this game. Nice for Louisville to obviously get him back. All right, moving on to Arkansas. Held off LSU. LSU led a lot of this game, but Arkansas did get the job done, all thanks to Darius Acuff Jr., who had 31 points, 6 assists, 13 of 19 from the field, 4 of 7 from 3. Like all the story was on, Debansa, Keaton Wagler, and Kingston Flemings, as it, kind of should have been. But you got Darius Acuff and Cam Boozer dropping over 30 points. Nate Ament dropping 29. What an absolutely fantastic day for all these freshmen. Acuff continues, like I said I was going to wait until Arkansas to label my SC Player of the Year. It's got to be Darius Acuff Jr., in my opinion, right now. There's not really been a team that is separated in the SEC quite yet. In fact, Texas A&M is actually your team in first place in the SEC right now. Now, this is going to be your rare instance where you see, when you pick the automatic qualifier in bracketology, Texas A&M will be your automatic qualifier because they're leading the conference right now, and they'll be like an 8 or 9 seed at this point. So you're going to have higher seeds like Florida, Arkansas, and actually Kentucky are the 3 teams right behind Texas A&M at 5-2 in the conference. So right now, I would go Darius Acuff Jr. as the SEC Player of the Year. All right, moving on. Speaking of Kentucky, they did win against Ole Miss. The ceiling was falling for Kentucky, at least according to their fans. And Kentucky, like we said, now 5-2 in the conference, 27th at Kenpom, starting to figure things out because Mark Pope's a really good coach. Otega Owe has continued to play really well. He had 23 points, and this one is looking, much better these past couple weeks. All right, let's talk about it because this game is nowhere near a bubble game, but we got to talk about it. Providence loses at home to Georgetown, 81-78. Ed Cooley goes in for this disastrous Georgetown team, trails to Providence 59-39 with 12:40 left in the game, comes all the way back to pick up a victory. This is the Providence team under Kim English. This is a weird situation where it didn't work out for either of them. Ed Cooley leaves. It hasn't worked out at Georgetown. Providence replaces him with Kim English. You can argue it's been even worse for Providence fans because Providence fans actually have talent every year. They were picked 4th in the preseason poll this year. However, Providence is now 2-7 in the conference. Georgetown, with this win, moves also to 2-7 in the conference. Marquette is the only team behind them at 2-8. So those are your 3 worst teams in the Big East. It's been a disaster. Kim English, I'm sorry to say it, but you better get that resume ready. It's looking like they're going to go in a different direction. Georgetown might also go in a different direction. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I honestly probably think that they should. Wouldn't it be weird if they both go in a different direction? Bring Ed Cooley back to Providence. I know Providence fans don't want him, but man, this has been bad for Kim English. You can't blow a 20-point lead against your basically now rival to a team that has been just as horrible as Georgetown has been. So horrible, horrible performance for Providence, and probably even worse for Providence bettors like myself in this game at 5.5. Yikes. St. John's did win at Xavier barely, 88-83. It was a close game all the way through. Xavier led a lot of it. Trey Carroll was awesome, but Rick Pitino does pick up his 900th career win against his son, and just a very balanced effort for this St. John's team. I was really impressed with Dylan Darling in this game. I've hated on Dylan Darling a lot in this podcast because he hasn't been very good this season. He stepped up in this game, made a big impact, and was kind of the changing force in this game. Seton Hall lost at DePaul, 67-60. Seton Hall is struggling. They are struggling bad right now. But let's talk about DePaul. Let's actually just include Seton Hall in the conversation. So here's your Big East standings. UConn at 9-0, still hasn't lost. St. John's, definitely your second best team, 8-1. Villanova, been really good. They're 6-3. Creighton, also 6-3. Tied for 5th in the Big East, Seton Hall, DePaul, and Butler. So it's going to be, they're going to climb up a little bit when Providence, Georgetown, and Marquette, and even Xavier are as bad as they've been this season. But how about DePaul starting to come on the up? Chris Holtman doing a fantastic job there. They're 102nd at Kenpom, nothing great. However, they win a lot of close games. DePaul's defense is up to 52nd in the country, which is one of the better teams in the Big East. How about Chris Holtman and the job he's quietly doing at DePaul? I'd love to see them back, at least meaning something in the Big East and not just a pushover game. All right, a very bubbly game. TCU goes to Baylor. TCU has now beaten them twice this season. Jaden Pierre was really good. Final score was 97-90. Jaden Pierre was really good, had 25 points, 6 of 9 from the field, 3 of 4 from 3. He reached 1,000 career points in this game, so congrats to Jaden Pierre in that one. Xavier Edmonds, was also really good, 23 points, 10 rebounds for Baylor. It has just been a disastrous season. In fact, Baylor is, I believe, 1-7 in the Big East right now. I take that back. They're 1-6, which is tied for last with Kansas State and Utah. Maybe need a little Jerome Tang and Scott Drew to mix back up and be on the same coaching staff again. Get them maybe, I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas State, I know we talked about it a little bit. The buyout is so big for Jerome Tang, but it's been ugly. Maybe, he will end up back at Baylor within the next couple of years where, they obviously won a national championship together. Tunde Yesufu has actually been really good for Baylor. Another freshman that's just flown under the radar because the team hasn't been very good. He had 21 points, 8 rebounds in this game. He's averaging about 18 points a game. So just did want to label him that he has been serviceable, but this Baylor team just not working out too well. Stanford loses at home to Cal 78-66. Camden was the leading scorer for Cal. He logged a double-double, 25 points, 10 rebounds. This was a huge win for Mark Madsen and company. And credit to Mark Madsen, he shut down Abuka Okori with the tremendous defense for this Cal team in this game. Abuka Okori, he had 14 points, basically all coming from the free throw line. 1 of 16 from the field, 0 of 9 from 3. Yikes. I've been talking about Abuka Okori, how he's climbing up draft boards as well. He's been fantastic all year, and he was due for one bad game. He got it here. However, it happened to be kind of a costly one in the bubble picture with Cal picking up a huge win at Stanford. All right, speaking of getting your resumes ready, Red Autry better do the same thing. He loses at home to Miami. 85-76. Malik Renew had 20 points, 11 rebounds. Big win for Miami. Miami was crawling towards the bubble. Big win here at Syracuse. Syracuse just can't get anything going in the right direction. UCF won at Colorado. UCF continues to build a really good resume this season. And then Oklahoma and Missouri was one of the better games. We'll see all season long. Stone knocked down a buzzer beater to get it to overtime. He had 20 points in the game, and then Mark Mitchell ended up hitting a buzzer beater in overtime to end up winning the game. He had 25 points, 10 rebounds. Missouri hanging on to the bubble. And then not on the graphic because Michigan State drilled Maryland. I didn't put on here because Maryland is just terrible. But I did want to mention Jeremy Fears did have 17 points, 7 assists. Yeah, that's a really good game there. So I had to mention him as well for these individual stat monsters that we saw. All right, moving on to Sunday just quickly. The one we got to note is USC did win at Wisconsin. Kind of a costly loss here for Wisconsin. It's not going to knock them out of the tournament picture. I do think USC needed it more than Wisconsin because USC had been struggling. Chad Baker-Mazara really showed up, had 29 points and 5 threes in this one. Wisconsin still, probably hovering about a 10 seed right now, as is probably USC, probably right about a 10 seed as well. Oregon lost at Washington. No real surprise there. The other one we did want to mention was UCF won at home against FAU. FAU was in first place in the American. This will bring them back to the field. USF might be the best team in the American, but we will see. Wichita State also did drill Memphis in the American on Saturday, so things are kind of shaping up to be a competitive race in the American Conference this year. All righty, next up, we are going to talk about our bracketology. We're going to talk about the top 5 seeds, and then we're going to talk about the Kenpom rankings before previewing the week. Just on the other side of the break, this is college basketball bracket science. We'll be right back. Possible to find affordable golf instruction. Well, not any longer. Introducing virtual swing reviews by PGA certified Brandon Jadich Golf Instruction. Just send a video of your swing to receive feedback to fix your swing in minutes. You don't need a $100 hour-long lesson when the instructor knows how to correct your habits after just one swing. Follow Brandon Jadich Golf Instruction on Instagram with the link below in the description and send a message saying swing review for just a $10 swing review, or comment under this YouTube video saying swing review. 2026 is a year of saving money and improvement. So start now with this limited time offer to grow your golf game. Alrighty, let's talk our top seeds as of January 26th. Like we said, we do a big Monday tonight, so some things are going to change. So hopefully you're consuming this a little bit before. But your 1 seeds, Arizona, Duke, UConn, Michigan stays exactly the same. Nebraska, they're still not all the way there. We'll talk about them a little bit more when we get to the Kenpom rankings, because that's going to be the reason they're not all the way there. Their predictive's still just not there, especially with, Michigan being number 2 at Kenpom, number 1 at Torvik, and 13-1 inside the first, inside the first 2 quadrants, So they're still right there with those high predictives. Got Nebraska as your second number, as your first number 2 seed. Nebraska will play Michigan. We will preview that game, and that's obviously going to be for your next number 1 seed. We'll talk about that here in a bit. Iowa State, I got back up to as a number 2 seed. They have just been steady across the board. Their predictive's really good. They're 6th at Kenpom, 9th at Torvik, 5-1 inside of Quad 1, have done a really good job for themselves. Michigan State moves from a 3 seed to a 2 seed with that dominating victory. We'll talk about them a little bit more in the Kenpom rankings because that's what's boosting them right now. And then Illinois up to a 2 seed as of now. Like we said, the predictives really like them. 5th at Kenpom, 6th at Torvik. 4-3 inside of Quad 1A. 4 Quad 1A wins is the most, tied for the most in the entire country. So they are still right in the conversation to win the Big Ten. So as you see, 4 of the top 8, in fact, 5 of the top 9 are actually Big Ten teams. Now, I would make the argument that I think the Big 12, if I had to bet a conference to win the national championship, I would pick the Big 12 right now because you got Arizona, you got Iowa State, you got Houston, Texas Tech and BYU are right there. Maybe even Kansas can get there. But as of now, seed-wise, I think the Big Ten is in as good a position as anyone. So Illinois, like we said, after that huge win at Purdue, 6-3 inside of Quad 1, which is good for tied for 3rd most in the country. Got them as a 2 seed. Up next is Purdue dropping from a 2 seed to a 3 seed. Houston also dropping from a 2 seed to a 3 seed. Very similar resumes between Purdue and Houston. Houston a little bit more favored by the predictive metrics, so long term might be a little bit better. However, Purdue has a better strength of record and wins above bubble, along with more Quad 1A and Quad 1 wins. Gonzaga as your next number 3 seed. Gonzaga escaped a game. We haven't talked about Gonzaga. Escaped a game against San Francisco. Like we said, if you're a Gonzaga fan, you're going to drop to a 3 seed at a lot of times, and you're going to climb to a 2 seed depending on what happens around you. And when you're not playing elite competition every week, you're a little bit vulnerable to more change. And then Texas Tech up to our next number 3 seed after that win against Houston. Texas Tech has been beating top tier competition with a win against Duke, a win against Houston, and a win against BYU. That's in pretty good shape there. Vanderbilt as your next number 4 seed. And actually your highest ranked team in the SEC right now would be Vanderbilt yet again. They've kind of just been taking care of business. They won at Mississippi State by 1 million to kind of boost their predictives yet again, but they're still fine. They're right there. I know they lost 3 in a row, but they've got a really good resume brewing. BYU as your next number 4 seed, like we said, they're kind of in the same boat as Gonzaga. BYU hasn't played a particularly hard schedule, I don't believe. I would have to check the exact schedule, but they haven't really picked up as many great wins as you might think. So the Villanova game on opening night is their highest ranked win, believe it or not. They also beat Wisconsin, Miami, Florida. Clemson is, probably your second best win. And then in Big 12 play, they've had a really easy start to conference play. Kansas State, who's 88th ranked in the country, Arizona State, who's 83rd ranked in the country, Utah, 112th ranked in the country. Those are probably your 3 worst teams in the Big 12. Then they won at home against TCU, as you should. And then their only real game they played in the Big 12 so far is at Texas Tech, where they lost that game. And then they did beat Utah yet again. So haven't played a particularly hard schedule in the Big 12. So if you're wondering why, the predictives really like them, this is why. They just haven't played a real tough schedule. And then Kansas is right there. Kansas is kind of climbing on all cylinders right now. We'll get a game with BYU and Kansas, like we mentioned. Then Virginia does drop to your last number 4 seed. They're still 4-0 inside of Quad 1A, which is fantastic. However, not all Quad 1 games are created equal. Not all Quad 1A games are created equal. They're in good shape at Torvik, 11th at Torvik, 17th at Kenpom. But with that loss to North Carolina, definitely dropped a little bit. You will see that North Carolina is not on this graphic. I will talk about them here in a second, though. Florida as your next number 5 seed, predictive's really good. However, just losing a couple games that they shouldn't. Strength of record is 21st, so not awesome, not bad, but still there. Alabama with their tough strength of schedule, still at a 5 seed. Arkansas starting to climb up, just haven't really done anything awesome to climb to the next step and be a top 4 protected seed. And then Clemson right behind them as your next 5 seed. So your 6 seeds right now, I'll label you 3 of them that I can just think of off the top of my head. It would be St. John's, in my opinion, as your first 6 seed. Then North Carolina was definitely boosted. The predictives still don't like North Carolina. They're 29th at Kenpom, 30th at Torvik, but their strength of record is 22nd and 19th and wins above bubble. They don't have any losses outside of quad one, so I'm not 100% sure why the predictives don't like them, but that is what goes on the team sheet. So I would have them as a 6 seed. And then Tennessee, after that win against Alabama, would definitely be boosted up to a 6 seed, in my opinion. And that's who it was. I would have Louisville as your last number 6 seed right now. They're 7th in BPI, 16th at Kenpom, 15th at Torvik, but their resume isn't as good. 33rd in strength of record, 28th in wins above bubble. So would have those as your next 6 seeds. To me, it's kind of set that these would be your top 24 overall seeds in whatever particular order they might be. Bracketology is hard. Everyone looks at it a little different. It's the overall, aggregate of what the committee is doing in the layout that they're doing. But I do believe those would be your top 24 teams in whatever order it might be. So that's your top seeds. Now let's move on and talk about the Kenpom rankings, because this will be, a little bit of a topic of discussion. Arizona has climbed up to number 1. As you can see, their net rating is 35.94, which is just barely above Michigan. They're in the top 5 of both offense and defense. Them and Duke are your only 2 teams in the country that can say that. Duke is 3rd. Michigan State is up to 4th at Kenpom right now. This was a huge jump. As you can see, it's very close. Their net rating is 31.25. Actually, Illinois and Iowa State are tied for 5th at 31.24. So right behind them, and Houston also less than a point behind them. But I did want to mention Michigan State, their defensive rating is 1st in the country, as you can see. So they have the top rated defense in the entire country. The offense is going to have to get a little better for them to be a national championship threat. I think it will with Jeremy Fears and the way he's been cooking, and Cohen Carr just seems to be getting better and better. They're 48th. If they can get to like the top 40, or even get in if they can get in the 30s, or if they get in the 20s, you might be looking at like a 1 seed. But they're really good. What a job Tom Izzo has done the past couple of years. Illinois, like we mentioned, does have the number 1 offense in the country now. Defense, 29th. That's not bad. If you're top 30 in both categories, you're in really good shape. Once again, we'll talk about these fun little stats of what you actually specifically need to have to win the national championship in terms of history in our Saturday show. So be sure to come back for that. Houston drops from 4th to 7th after that loss at Texas Tech. I'm not 100% sure why, but they're still right there in the conversation. They could easily climb up to, 4th yet again, like we said, 4th through 7, really close. Purdue's at number 8 with the 2nd best offense in the country. Gonzaga at 9. UConn down at 10. The surprising one that we've talked about for a while with UConn, their defense is much better than their offense, which is weird because they have so much firepower on offense. 4th in defensive efficiency, 38th in offensive efficiency. I think we see that this UConn team can be better on offense. Dan Hurley's a really good offensive coach, maybe the best offensive coach in the country. So, the big question coming into this season was how good would their defense be to match their offense? And it's been weird that their defense is so much better than their offense. If they can get to like top 20, this team is going to be really scary, but it hasn't shown all the way through yet. Like we said, Florida's still really highly thought of by the predictives. They are 11th. Nebraska is down at 12th. So this is the example I wanted to give. These do influence specifically betting lines. So when you see Michigan taking on Nebraska this week, it's going to be a bigger line than you think. So all the computers are telling you that Michigan is better than Nebraska. That's what influences these Vegas lines. I'm not saying it's true, but it is it's been a proponent for picking the best teams in the country for a while now. Vanderbilt, like we mentioned, your top team out of the SEC right now, really good on offense. They're 10th in the country. Kansas, 14th. So they're starting to climb up as well. Their offense was really struggling at the beginning of the year. Kansas, for those who don't know, is a really good defensive team. Bill Self has quietly become a really good defensive coach the past couple of years. I know the offenses haven't been great, but with Darren Peterson, starting to get a little bit healthier. I know he just missed the last game. I'm guessing that was more of a precaution for this game against BYU. If they can get to top 20 in the country with Darren Peterson there, I know they're 12th right now in defense efficiency. I think they're a top 10 defense in the country. This Kansas team could be in really good shape. But BYU, like we mentioned, really good on offense with their big 3, AJ Devanza, Richie Saunders, and Rob Wright. Louisville, really good on the offensive end as well, getting Michael Brown Jr. back. So as you see them as a 6 seed, compared to 16th overall, that should tell you the predictives are much better than their resume. So still, have the ceiling of being a really good team. Virginia right behind them, really smooth in offense and defense. Texas Tech, not too fantastic on the defensive end, 40th in the country. They got to get that to probably top 35 with the 9th best offense in the country. Like we said, JT Toppin just dishing it out to those shooters. Alabama, the big one, 3rd in offense, 69th in defense. They don't have a rim protector. Will Charles Bediako be eligible after his Tuesday court hearing? We will see. That might be a big part of it. Tennessee, top 20 in the predictives at 20. I'll get through these next 15 a little quicker. Iowa still liked by the predictives. They're 21. Arkansas, yes, Arkansas is lower ranked in the predictives than Iowa. Arkansas is 56th in defense in the country. That's not good enough. They will have to climb up to be a national championship threat. St. John's at 23rd. This team's still good. They are 8-1 in the Big East. Have done nothing wrong come Big East play. St. Louis, like we mentioned, don't let this story fizzle out. They are really good. They're 39th in offense, 23rd in defense, coming from the mid-major ranks. They're 19-1 in the country. Auburn right behind them really picked things up. However, their defense not all the way there. NC State, a team, like we said, those predictives mean something. So we gave the example on our last show. Say NC State is a 10 seed taking on UCF as a 7 seed. NC State would be favored in that game because UCF is actually 44th at Kenpom compared to NC State's 26th. However, UCF obviously has a much better resume. So take that as you will. Like we said, Oregon, a couple years ago, again, when they played against South Carolina, Oregon was an 11 seed. South Carolina was a 6 seed. Oregon was favored in that game because the predictives liked them, and they were obviously, really hot coming into the tournament. But that's why these predictives do mean something. Kentucky still inside the top 30 at 27. Villanova 28. We said North Carolina at 29. Their defense has been bad, 54th in the country. Got to get a little better on that side of the ball, but starting, with that win against Virginia, we'll see how good this team can be. Clemson at 30. Offense, not great. Defense, really good. One of the best coach teams in the country. Clemson's still right there, as we said, as like a 5 seed. Texas A&M is 31st in the country. Have just been plugging along. Haven't played the toughest SEC schedule yet, but they are in first place of the SEC right now. Utah State right behind them at 32. Georgia at 33. St. Mary's at 34. And Indiana at 35. Indiana was the one that will actually, out of all of this graphic, that would be on the outside looking in right now because they haven't really beaten anyone. However, the predictives do still like them because point margin is a big influence in these predictives. So that's your Kenpom rankings that we were going to talk about. Now let's just preview this upcoming week. So as we said, Big Monday is back for college basketball. We have 2 big games on ESPN. Number 23, Louisville at number 5, Duke. These numbers will change as the AP poll is about to come out here in about 2.5 hours. 7 o'clock ESPN. Duke is favored by 7.5 at home in that one. Cam Boozer versus Michael Brown Jr. Should be a lot of fun. 9 o'clock on ESPN. Number 1 and undefeated Arizona at number 13 BYU. Is this the time they suffer their first loss? We're gonna have to see. To me, it's all just gonna depend on how efficient this BYU team scores it. We know they're gonna score it well. Arizona's floor is just so high with their style. Can Rob Wright, AJ Devanza, and Richie Saunders catch fire and knock off this Arizona team? And then 7 o'clock FS1, we got Penn State at Ohio State. 7 o'clock, not even on TV, but wanted to give a mid-major love here. There's really not that many great games other than these top 2, obviously. Jackson State and Florida A&M out of the SWAC. Your top 2 teams in the standings in the SWAC. Florida A&M favored by 5.5, and they are your favorite to win the SWAC this season. Moving on, let's talk about Tuesday's matchups with the big ones. So, we got Duke, Louisville, Arizona, and BYU. And we also get Nebraska and number 3, Michigan. So the line is Michigan -9 in this game. So that number's bigger than you might think, just with the computer rankings being a thing. Nebraska carrying an undefeated record going in. If Arizona loses at BYU, Nebraska loses at Michigan, Miami of Ohio would be your last undefeated team. But we will see. This is going to be a tremendous matchup. Can Nebraska hang with Michigan's talent and physicality and NBA talent that they have? That's 7 o'clock on Peacock. 7 o'clock on ESPN, we get number 20, Arkansas and Darius Acuff Jr. traveling to Oklahoma. Arkansas favored by 3 on the road in that one. 7 o'clock SEC Network. Tennessee coming off that huge win at Alabama. Going to Georgia. Georgia favored by 1 in that matchup. 7 o'clock ESPN 2. Number 14, Virginia at Notre Dame. Virginia coming off the loss, favored by 7. Notre Dame just a sitting duck right now, it seems. Really bad. 7:30 TNT, Providence and Kim English. Yikes. Traveling to number 2, UConn. Remember, they played a fantastic game earlier this season at Providence, which went to a couple overtimes. UConn ended up getting the job done. However, UConn is favored by 16 at home in this one. Like we said, UConn has kind of just squeaked by some of these games. Providence has talent. They're not a very well-coached team, but they have talent. Will UConn assert their dominance and pick up a 20-point victory here, or will it be close? 9 o'clock on Peacock, rivalry game. Number 4, Purdue, coming off that loss, coming off a couple losses, going to Indiana. Purdue is favored by 4 on the road in that one. We'll see if Indiana can match Purdue's physicality. I don't think they can, quite frankly, but Assembly Hall is going to be rocking. 9 o'clock ESPN, two teams towards the top of the SEC. Kentucky at number 15, Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt favored by 7 at home. And then Alabama, will Charles Bediako play on Tuesday? I guess they'll know that day because that's when his court hearing is on Tuesday. 9 o'clock SC Network, they host Missouri. Alabama favored by 17. Now let's talk about Wednesday's matchup, which isn't really any high-end talent, but just a bunch of really good games. Baylor at Cincinnati to start us off at 6:30 on FS1. Cincinnati's favored by 2 at home. Cincinnati also kind of just sitting duck. They lost to Arizona State earlier this week. You can't lose to that too. Whew. Wes Miller in Cincinnati versus Bobby Hurley in Arizona State. Whew. That's a double sitting duck game, as we'll call it. 7 o'clock ESPN2, Texas, who's been playing really well, as has Auburn. Game played at Auburn. Auburn favored by 5 at home. 7 o'clock on the Big Ten Network. USC coming off that big win, going to Iowa. Iowa favored by 9. Bennett Sturts versus Chad Baker-Mazara in that one. Good guard matchup. 7 o'clock on Peacock. We got Butler, who is sort of hanging on the bubble, believe it or not, at St. John's, who solidified themselves as one of the better teams, the second best team in the Big East. Favored by 10 at home. 7:30 Peacock. Xavier, who is scrappy under Richard Pitino, doesn't have a lot of talent, but goes to Seton Hall, who's been struggling. Seton Hall is favored by 7. 9 o'clock ESPN2, Houston coming off of the loss, traveling to TCU. Houston favored by 5 on the road. Be careful with TCU. However, I think Houston's going to get the job done here. I actually just bet Houston to win the Big 12. I think it's as good of odds as you're going to get coming off of that loss. They don't play the hardest schedule coming down the stretch, and Arizona is going to play a hard schedule coming down the stretch. Their back half of Big 12 play is much tougher. So Houston might be a decent bet. I got them at like plus 500 to win the Big 12. So we'll see what they can do. 9 o'clock SEC Network, Florida coming off the loss, traveling to South Carolina, which has been scrappy at home the past couple of years, but not a very good team. Florida favored by 9. 9 o'clock ACC Network, Stanford needs to pick one up here. They're starting to, I have them on the outside looking in right now. Playing at Miami. Miami favored by 9 and Jay Lucas. 9 o'clock Big Ten Network, Minnesota at Wisconsin. Both teams coming off of a loss. Wisconsin's got to get the job done in that one. Then 10:30 FS1. San Diego State, who's been playing well as of late, hosts Colorado State. San Diego State favored by 9. Then 11 o'clock on the Big Ten Network, UCLA at Oregon. UCLA favored by 2. Been playing better as of late. Don't drop this game if you're UCLA. You need it. So that is it. That's going to be the games for this upcoming week. We will be back on Thursday. We'll talk a little bit when we preview. Like we said, on Thursday, it's going to be mostly just talking bracketology. We'll review these games that just happened, talk bracketology, and then we will talk about the upcoming games for just Thursday and Friday, because then our weekend preview will be on Saturday. Thursday, there's a lot of good mid-major games that we'll talk about, and then Friday, I believe there's a couple of real good games at night. Michigan at Michigan State is at night, so Michigan gets, Nebraska and Michigan State this week. Big week for Michigan if you're a Wolverine fan. All right, that'll do it for the show today. Be sure to hit that like button before heading out and subscribe to the show. Turn on those post notifications. Comment your feelings below. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Bracket Science with 2 S's. We'll be back and talking to you Thursday morning. Be sure to come back for that, and we will talk to you again then. Till then, take care. Enjoy the snowstorm.